Story 1. Thought he would be cool by drinking an entire bottle of vodka. He died from alcohol poisoning. Story 2. Lost a testicle in a barbed wire fence mishap and was forever known as Uniball Scott. Not sure if it negatively affected his life, but high school was definitely difficult. Story 3. The kid was smart and an excellent multi-sport athlete. He had a full baseball scholarship lined up at a state school. The summer after senior year, at a party he got drunk, started a fight, and broke his knees. I don't know what happened to him, but I know he did not go to college. Story 4. They poured chemicals on the football field to spell out our graduation year as a senior prank. It killed the grass and ruined the soil beneath it. The grass and soil on a football field are specialized and expensive. It costs tens of thousands of dollars to repair on such short notice. The school wanted to be lenient. However, the insurance company required them to involve the police to process the claim. Consequently, they were arrested. Story 5. 4 people were in a car. The driver was going very fast on an expressway late at night. He lost control of the vehicle and flipped it, ejecting 3 passengers who were not wearing seatbelts. The driver was rolled over by the car and killed instantly. The second passenger died from injuries, and the third suffered severe brain damage and requires assistance for the rest of his life. 1 passenger was wearing a seatbelt and sustained minor injuries, except for the trauma of witnessing 2 friends die and 1 become severely disabled. This incident occurred in upstate New York at least 15 years ago. The important lesson is, always wear a seatbelt. Story 6. 2 of them decided to take hunting rifles and shoot several rounds into the principal's house at night, thinking the police would not catch them and they would not be charged with attempted murder. Story 7. Got suspended for something really dumb, so he and a couple of friends tried to burn down our assistant principal's house. They got the address wrong and almost harmed an innocent family. Story 8. He got his girlfriend pregnant. His pregnant girlfriend dumped him and started dating his best friend. Shortly after giving birth, she became pregnant again. She dumped the best friend and went back to the popular kid. The popular kid learned she was pregnant with the best friend's child. He got into his car and parked on the best friend's street. He waited for the best friend to show up and shot him 3 times. The girlfriend was in the car with him and even gave him the gun. The best friend survived, and the popular kid and girlfriend are currently in jail. This happened in Canada. Story 9. He took pictures of himself receiving oral sex from the football coach's daughter and slipped a copy under the coach's office door as revenge for some slight against him. He was one of the top football players. He was foolish enough to think the coach's daughter would not reveal who it was in the picture. Of course she told, and of course he knew, and of course he was kicked off the team. After a few months of disciplinary actions because he sort of spiraled, he was sent to one of those schools for people with difficulty functioning in regular schools. I don't know if it ruined his life, but it ruined his trajectory, and he ended up dropping out of the local community college instead of going to Florida State like he had planned. Story 10. The summer after we graduated, we found out he had been physically abusing his girlfriend, who we were all friends with. Last I heard, he is dating a girl who is barely of legal age and is still selling marijuana to the high school students. Story 11. He decided it was a good idea to get high on pills and go for a drive. He ran over a woman and her dog, killing them both. He left his car and called the police to say that the car was stolen by a man. After they found the car and the accident, they called him to the station for questioning. He went to the police station with the keys in his pocket. Story 12. Full scholarship for football at any school you can name. He decided to rob a Walgreens with his friends one Friday night. He lost everything. I saw him working at McDonald's a few years later. Story 13. My mom went to school with a popular kid who was driving under the influence and crashed with another popular and generally more well-liked kid. The passenger was badly hurt, the driver only superficially. He did not want to get caught, so he left, leaving the passenger to die on the side of the road. It was later determined that the passenger would have absolutely lived if the driver had called emergency services. He was still alive for hours. The driver got caught anyway. I think he is out and still lives in the small town where he grew up. It is a no one talks about it, but everyone knows kind of situation. He has no real social life because of it. Story 14. Went to a house party shortly after graduation, got kicked out for inappropriate behavior, went back to the party and assaulted the host with a bat. Petitioned for a conditional release to spend Christmas with family. Completely normal behavior. Story 15. He didn't exactly ruin his life, but he managed to crash two brand new Audi A8s into the same telephone pole outside of school. The second time, we all stayed in the school parking lot to witness the aftermath. His dad was furious, saying, "You hit the same pole. How? How?" After that, he got a used yellow wagon. It was hilarious. Story 16. This kid wasn't necessarily popular, but he was on the verge. He wanted nothing more in the world than to be on our high school's cross-country team. He just didn't have the strength for it. He practiced repeatedly and tried out several times but could never quite make the cut. Everyone knew about his desire to be on the team, and I think most of us were rooting for him because he had the heart, just not the legs. One day in gym class, we were having a fitness test where we were to run laps around the outer perimeter of our school and complete as many laps as possible. Most of us dropped out after a lap or two and went to sit on the bleachers. There were a group of cross-country kids, though, who took this as a challenge and were running seemingly endless laps. The not-quite-popular kid figured that if he could keep up with those guys, he would show that he deserved to be on the team. Lap after lap, he hung right at the back of their pack, never catching up but never falling completely behind either. The large group of us who had already given up and were sitting on the bleachers saw this, and we all started rooting for him, watching closely. As the pack passed our bleachers on another lap, the kid following behind visibly had a bathroom accident. He soiled his gym shorts and we all watched in horror. The kid just kept running. On the next lap, our gym teacher, who fancied himself a drill sergeant, flagged the kid down, reprimanded him, and made him clean up the mess as we all sat there wishing for an unexpected event to end our collective misery. His popularity never recovered. He never ran a single meter for our cross-country team. If anyone wants to make an inspiring film out of this, contact me and I will provide more details. Story 17. He severely harmed the disabled child, who was well loved by everyone and told dad jokes. The child suffered a brain bleed and almost died, leading to the attacker being sentenced to prison for attempted manslaughter. What did the disabled child do to deserve this? Allegedly, he told a somewhat flirty joke to the popular boy's sister, who was one grade below us. The joke was something like, "If you were a dessert, you'd be a cutie pie. His parents do not even visit him in prison." Story 18. Two groups of popular students from my high school and a rival school ended up causing a tragedy that destroyed several lives. They had a bonfire party at a lake, and tensions flared between the schools. At some point, someone pulled out a pistol, which caused everyone to panic and rush to their vehicles. In the chaos, several people jumped into the back of a pickup truck. The driver, impaired and trying to escape, attempted to pass a car by veering into oncoming traffic. In a desperate maneuver to avoid a head-on collision, the truck flipped. The accident was catastrophic. 3 students were killed, and 8 others were critically injured, with many left in comas. A friend who witnessed the crash described it as horrific, with body parts scattered and an overwhelming scene of chaos. The incident has become infamously known as the lake tragedy on that road. Not just one student, but many from 2 schools ruined their lives in one tragic night. Do not drink and drive. Story 19. He and 3 of his friends got drunk at a parking lot hangout after practice, drove home, and their car went off the side of a bridge into the river below, killing all 4 of them. Story 20. He went train surfing on an intercity train. His head was found over a mile from the other parts of his body, or so the rumor went. Story 21. He tried to hit me with his car, lost control, and ended up in the ditch. The police arrived, discovered he was driving under the influence and underage, and he lost his scholarship. Story 22. Went on a joyride after the prom and crashed, killing one of the passengers. Spent 2 years in jail followed by a lifetime of shame. Story 23. He assaulted a woman he was involved with after she told him she was pregnant, nearly killing her. He was sentenced to approximately 20 years in prison. Story 24. A man had a telephone pole fall on his car a couple of years after high school. Instead of calling for professional help to have it removed, he and a friend tried to remove it themselves. The man ended up being crushed to death. This was extremely tragic and also very unwise. Story 25. He did not become a professional baseball player as he had told everyone because he partied too much and became very unpleasant to be around. He would bully anyone he encountered from high school, especially at bars, to make himself feel cool. As a side note, he would mime playing baseball while talking to people. He got married and repeatedly cheated on his wife with strippers. When she found out and planned to divorce him, he took his own life with a shotgun. Story 26. He failed out of college during his senior year. He got hooked on drugs and was an absent father. He then finally got clean, went back, and finished college. Now he is a drug counselor and has reconnected with his children. Strong work, Doug. Story 27. Not the dumbest by any means. Most of the popular kids I went to school with are living their best lives now. I went to school with a popular kid a year ahead of me who tried to break up an argument outside of the pub. He was punched to the ground and kicked repeatedly in the head like a football. He never recovered from the coma. The incident made national headlines, especially because it involved underage drinkers and exposed a scandal of city center pubs not checking identification. Story 28. Dug up the body of an 11-year-old boy who died in 1921 in a cemetery for African American veterans and their families, then decapitated the body and smoked marijuana from the skull. Story 29. Got addicted to drugs. Wealthy parents helped him enter rehabilitation and later secured a lucrative job that requires no qualifications. Now he is still in the media industry, well paid, enough to sustain his functioning drug addiction. Some people have everything handed to them and cannot even fail properly. Story 30. Had a relationship with a man's girlfriend without his consent, then proceeded to brag about it to the man's friends at a party. The man then shot him 12 times. He was only 19. Story 31. Methamphetamine. From what I understand, she has a couple of children with different fathers. The fathers have full custody of her children. I see her mugshot in the local paper occasionally because she is in and out of jail. The last I heard, she was living in a dilapidated camper in a trailer park. It is unbelievable how people can completely ruin their own lives. Story 32. He committed to a college far away from his girlfriend, who decided not to go to college. He had a football scholarship. She panicked that he was going so far away and told him she was pregnant to get him to stay. He withdrew from the school, gave up his scholarship, and decided to stay local to be around for his future child. Later, they found out the girlfriend lied to get him to stay and that his football prospects were all gone. There was no pregnancy. He is still in their hometown. Story 33. Sitting on railings is dangerous. Just don't do it. I know one girl from high school who was sitting on someone's deck railing at a party. She fell backward, broke her back, and is in a wheelchair to this day. Another person was sitting on the railing at a Skitran station in Vancouver, which is like an elevated subway. He fell backward a full story onto concrete and died in front of his girlfriend. One moment he was chatting happily with her, and the next he was gone. It may seem like a small thing, but it's not worth the risk to sit on a railing. Story 34. He got drunk at 19 and crashed his car into a pole going around 60 miles per hour, flinging his body from the car and dying on impact. I hear our high school reunions are still very strange, as we had the one big reunion the year after graduation at his funeral. He was much cooler than me, but because the school system sorted general education and advanced placement classes by last name, we became friends from having so many classes we disliked together. He got along with everyone, and everyone showed up to say goodbye. Story 35. Had sexual relations with the German foreign exchange student on the principal's desk during a pep rally. Immediate expulsion followed. The exchange student was sent back to Germany. In his defense, the encounter was consensual, and she was very attractive. Story 36. Not dumb, actually one of the smartest people I have ever met, just not what we expected from him. He was absolutely brilliant and was sent to a special academy for gifted children for the last year or two of high school. The pressure overwhelmed him, and he died homeless on the sidewalk in his early 30s. To clarify, the special school was not what caused his difficulties. It was the intense pressure to succeed. He spent his life constantly being told he had to keep going further, try harder, and that he was going to change the world. That is a lot to put on someone, especially a child. Story 37. Star quarterback of high school football team, #1 player in the state. Would have been a contender for a major football school after 1 year at a smaller school to improve grade point average. Over the summer, committed robbery and sexual assault. Sentenced to 30 years in prison. Story 38. Defaced the school with racist graffiti as a senior prank. Story 39. I had a friend who was a straight-A student. Everyone loved him, and he came from a good middle-class family. His dad was a solicitor, I think. He never put a foot out of line. One day, he came in and set off half a dozen smoke bombs in math class. It turns out his dad was part of the SEALD, not an English Civil War reenactment society. The smoke bombs were used by his dad to simulate smoke from cannons. He was quickly suspended and then sent to private schooling. I have never seen such a quick turnaround. Apparently, the smoke bombs are dangerous, and his dad had signed something stating they were kept in a secure location. It is not something you should steal, smuggle into secondary school, and throw at the math teacher because you forgot your homework. Story 40. Big football star, handsome, ladies' man at my school who definitely would have gotten a sports scholarship took a defecated on a teacher's car and got expelled. A year later, he was stabbed in a knife fight and then ended up in jail shortly after. Story 41. This man was very confident and enjoyed partying. When he was around 18, he had several girls accompanying him. However, years later, he still had the same teenage personality, but now in his 20s. The girls were no longer impressed, so he began pursuing significantly underage girls instead, buying them beer and reportedly had sexual relations with one of them. When this became known, no one was particularly impressed, especially the judge. Story 42. Flashy, good-looking kid John, who was honestly quite talented at Taekwondo, kept pushing, poking, and bullying the quiet new kid who had immigrated from Venezuela. After the immigrant kid, Andre, had enough and pushed back, John challenged him to a fight after school. The fight ended very quickly. The Taekwondo athlete tried a flashy kick like one you'd see in a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. It looked good but missed. Andre easily dodged it, threw a right hook to the jaw, and then a left roundhouse kick to the face. John was out cold while standing up. Later, we found out that Andre's father was a former military police officer in Venezuela and a kickboxer of some repute. He had taught his son from an early age how to protect himself. This happened in March, and we never saw John until graduation in the summer. He spent the rest of the school year being homeschooled. Story 43. Married the popular guy right after high school. 2 years later, they found she had hanged herself in her basement. Story 44. Drunk driving. Paralyzed before she finished high school. Very hard, very permanent lesson for a young person. Story 45. She went to the University of Texas at Austin on a bioengineering scholarship. She graduated and got a nice introductory lab job. She was unable to avoid speaking negatively to her lead researcher and has been unable to secure a lab job since. That was nearly 10 years ago. No one knows what she is doing now. Story 46. Took LSD with some of his friends, ordered pizza, forgot they did, and then shot the delivery driver with a shotgun through the front door. Story 47. They partied too hard at a fraternity party and overdosed their freshman year. Apparently, the people there just dumped all the unconscious individuals into a single room with no one keeping watch. I had no idea since I went to a different school and only found out after seeing a fundraising campaign on social media. Story 48. When I was in high school, one of the most popular students received a full athletic scholarship to one of the main universities in our state. The weekend before he was to leave for college, he went out drinking with his friends. He got very drunk and decided to ride a pump jack as if he were riding a bull at a rodeo. Unfortunately, he fell into the gears and lost one of his legs. He lost his scholarship. Story 49. Got into cocaine at parties and smoking weed since he was 11. He was a 4.0 student, quarterback, and was the human embodiment of the adjective foxy. He always sold weed, but then he started snorting more cocaine than the profit he made selling weed. He began to lose weight and took too much when he used again. He overdosed before his 21st birthday, not even 3 years out of high school. He had been using for less than a year. Story 50. Multi-level marketing. Tried to leverage his social influence to get people involved. Burned a lot of bridges. Skipped town and now works at McDonald's. He was not a bad person, but I consider trying to recruit someone into a pyramid scheme a hostile act. Story 51. Maybe not popular, but one of my brother's friends was caught with drugs at school. His parents kicked him out and refused to pay for college. Luckily, he cleaned up and joined the Navy to pay for college. It seems like it worked out for him. Story 52. Straight A student, multiple scholarships, decided to play lacrosse to become more athletic. Took a knee to the head in a game and it rattled his brain. Never recovered mentally. Now works as a checker at a local grocery store. So sad. Nicest kid ever. Story 53. When I was in my first year of high school, hazing was still the norm, and yes, it started in high school. Usually, you would only get a bunch of upperclassmen cornering you to sing the Gaudimus Igitur song. But two of the most popular guys in my school decided to single out two girls and make them stay after school for hazing. One of them brought her new boyfriend. The popular upperclassmen did not like this. From what I remember, those two popular guys bound the girls and the boyfriend's wrists, and when the 3 first years panicked, it got nasty. The first-year student ended up severely beaten after trying to stand up to those two, and the girls had various injuries from trying to run away while bound. This ended up on national news with camera footage from the schoolyard. Those two were all brawn and no brain. Story 54. She became pregnant and sat her general certificate of secondary education exams at over 30 weeks, but failed all of them because she did not attend class. Story 55. A girl from my high school met up with her college boyfriend and decided to race him on a local road. She failed to make a turn and crashed into a tree. She was dead by the time the ambulance arrived. Story 56. He was experimenting with making an explosive device for fun and accidentally injured himself and 2 of his friends. 2 of the 3 died before starting college. It is very sad and unfortunate, as they had so much potential. Story 57. Back around 2006 to 2007, when smartphones and sending nude photos were relatively new, a well-liked popular girl in her junior year had everything going for her. She was involved in almost every extracurricular activity, including sports and cheerleading. She wasn't a bully like the stereotypical popular trope and actually talked to everyone. She even tried to encourage me to come out of my shell when I was a sophomore going through my goth phase. However, she sent a topless picture of herself to her boyfriend. The boyfriend shared it with all of his friends, and those friends passed it on to others. This was a small high school of about 400 students, so the news spread quickly. She was humiliated, and her parents forced her to be homeschooled through her senior year. I never heard about what happened to her afterward, but it was sad to see her fall from such a height. Also, considering the legal uncertainties surrounding minors sending explicit images at the time, I'm not sure if she or her boyfriend were ever prosecuted for distribution of explicit material or revenge pornography. Story 58. Got drunk at a party. There was a freshman who crashed the senior party, and a senior went after him with a broken beer bottle. The senior was charged as an adult with attempted manslaughter. This incident happened the week before his 18th birthday. He was never seen at school again, and his football scholarship to college was revoked. I only know when his birthday is because it is the day before mine. In elementary school, our class parties were often combined. I have no idea where this person is now. I have not spoken to anyone in my class since graduation. Story 59. Based on my graduating class, drugs. I went to my 40th reunion. Of my class, 15 had died of overdoses. I also know of at least another 20 or so who went through a lot of rehabilitation because of their addictions. Every single one of them thought they could handle it when they first took it up. Story 60. Not necessarily the most popular but well-known, he and his twin brother were 2 of the smartest kids in our grade. One of them was valedictorian, the other salutatorian. I forgot which was which. The brother in question went to a prestigious college, not Harvard but still respected. In the second semester, he was raided by the police. He was running a grow operation out of his dorm room with his roommate. Evidently, it was quite successful until that point. Story 61. For many men, alcoholism develops before age 25, and they are required to pay child support for at least one child. For many women, pregnancy from a one-night stand is common. Most of these scenarios can have serious negative consequences. Story 62. One of the hockey players in my high school tried to commit suicide by shooting himself when his girlfriend broke up with him. He loaded the gun with the wrong-sized ammunition and ended up blowing the skin off one side of his head. I do not know what happened to him after high school, but he went from being a handsome guy to being a half-handsome guy. Story 63. Married an older man and had 5 children with him. Now she is severely unhappy. I know because sometimes I see her around town, and she looks absolutely miserable. Poor thing. Right after high school, I noticed her decline and used to take delight in it because she was one of the girls who bullied me the most in high school. As an adult woman going through my own financial and marital difficulties, I now sympathize and pity her. Story 64. Stockbroker trainee wanted to start a paintball business. Embezzled money from a client to start the business. Made many market bets to pay it off but failed. Barred from the market, his father had to pay it off along with the fines. He lost his position as manager of the brokerage office for 2 years. The paintball business also failed. Story 65. He would pick on this child with autism, and the school would look the other way. He was on his way to getting a football scholarship. The child's uncle was involved with a white supremacist biker gang. One day, the uncle showed up, broke his knee, and busted his head open with a bike chain while the popular child was walking home with his friends. Because his knee was badly damaged, he could no longer participate in the sport or receive the scholarship. Story 66. Lost his full scholarship for baseball due to a driving under the influence and hit-and-run incident. He now works at a slaughterhouse. Story 67. He went to jail for being an accessory, and his parents were sued heavily. Rich kids playing gangster. He went with his friend to buy a couple of pounds of marijuana. What he didn't know was his friend wasn't going to pay for the marijuana. His friend took out a tire iron and proceeded to beat the supplier. What the two didn't know was that the supplier was a local undercover police officer. The police officer sued the wealthier of the two families. The kid got out of jail a couple of years ago. His parents moved him across the country because he kept getting women pregnant. I know his mom, and she became like a zombie on medication. Story 68. Speeded out of the parking lot of the movie theater after watching the original Fast and Furious movie. He killed a person in the ensuing car accident, was convicted, and spent about 10 years in prison. I do not recall if it was another driver or his own passenger. Story 69. She tried to force-feed the Jewish student bacon and struck him when he refused. Because it was high school and she was 18, she was sent to jail but later got into even more trouble. She is currently in jail for aggravated assault. Story 70. Maybe not ruin their lives but made things weird. Keep in mind this was in 2008 to 2010, so being gay was a much bigger deal. 2 of the popular baseball players were involved with each other, and their girlfriends found out. Their defense was, "It's okay. Baby, we didn't like it, so I'm not gay. We don't have to break up." Yeah, that didn't work. It was a big scandal because popular guys being gay at that time was just not heard of. Story 71. A friend of mine was pretty wild. He went on spring break during the first week of March to Cancun senior year, and he used a lot of cocaine one night. He did not make it to the hotel. 3 months later, he was at the embassy calling his parents. Apparently, he went on quite a binge and was literally wearing rags and living on the streets when they came and got him. Story 72. A friend of mine knew a student in high school who exclusively worked on chest and shoulders, and now he has poor posture. Story 73. He and some other men wanted to go to spring break early. They stole a car and some guns, and shot a woman in the face while trying to steal her car after the first stolen car ran out of gas in Tennessee. They did not make it very far. After spending many years behind bars, he managed to escape with a convicted murderer with only about 18 months left on his sentence. They were caught a few days later while raiding an old man's refrigerator. He did not get out on time. Apparently, they had been planning it for months, and despite me being one of his best friends, I had no idea. He ruined his life for no reason, and it still breaks my heart almost 30 years later. The woman survived, by the way. Story 74. More like his body ruined his life. Cancer. Luke died of cancer. Cancer is terrible. Luke was one of the best. Everyone liked him, and I say that as one of the school nerds while he was a high school football star player. A genuinely great guy all around. Story 75. One person was fired from their job for taking the dealer Camaro without permission and using it to transport cocaine. Story 76. Broke into the school and wrote inappropriate words everywhere. Vandalized a lot of school equipment. No mask or disguise. Cameras are installed throughout the building. I never understood how he and his friends thought they would not get caught immediately. Story 77. He killed himself after getting caught impregnating another girl. His main girlfriend was the cheerleading captain and very popular. He was a senior, I was a junior. Story 78. I was friends with a girl in high school who won Miss Pennsylvania when we were seniors. She started using cocaine to help her stay thin. She ended up getting arrested when her boyfriend took her along to sell cocaine to an undercover police officer. She lost her title and scholarship, and her parents threw her out. I drove through Hardee's a few years ago for a drink, and she was working at the register. She recognized me, but I didn't know who she was. It was really sad to see what she had done to herself. Story 79. The only person who comes to mind is a high school friend who had the looks and could have had any girl he wanted. He decided that gang activity was the way to go, got locked up for murder, was released early, and then died of cancer a year ago. I never hated him. I just know he made the wrong decisions in his life while in school. Story 80. I do not know the full details, only what I found online using public records and a name search. She apparently developed extremely possessive and stalking behavior toward her romantic partner, leading to a court order prohibiting her from approaching her ex or his pets. She violated this order as well. She then created a LinkedIn profile listing only our high school from over 20 years ago with no title or position, so I assume she has never actually worked. Story 81. Hosted a party at his parents' house with dozens invited. He got everyone excited, chugged a beer in front of the crowd, and dove into the shallow end of his parents' pool. Story 82. We lived in a small town in a rural county, named after one of his relatives who settled the area in the 1880s. It was a big fish in a small pond mentality. He had everything handed to him in middle school and high school. He never sat on the bench in any sport he played and never had to follow the same rules as everyone else. He left the small town for the big city but was quickly faced with the reality that he was no longer king. So he moved back home. Story 83. Engaging in inappropriate behavior while intoxicated at a party. The video became well known at school and was seen by teachers. Story 84. He was not really popular when we were in high school, but Lil Xan was in my graduating class. Story 85. Was shot during a marijuana deal gone wrong a year or two after graduation. Almost lost their arm. A few years later, they were arrested with an arsenal of weapons and large quantities of fentanyl in their home. Sentenced to prison for a long time. Story 86. Steal a lifeguard's jet ski at a popular beach on spring break. It turns out those count as police vehicles where they were. Story 87. Star high school running back. He blew his knee at an out-of-town game, so he started selling drugs on the side and living large. But selling acid was a bad idea, and selling it to a police officer was worse. A new law stated that 17-year-olds could serve federal time. He was one of the first. William Steniforth Donahue. His grandfather immigrated from Ireland, but William made a few bad decisions. Story 88. I got very drunk during my senior year, drove on the wrong side of the road, and hit a single mother head-on, resulting in her death. Story 89. He lives a happy life now. He brought a bunch of Adderall to our junior high dance, and 3 to 4 kids ended up overdosing and needed their stomachs pumped. Story 90. A woman was accused of beating her sister with a prosthetic leg. Story 91. A few months before we graduated, during my senior year of high school, 5 of the most popular boys at school were driving a truck while intoxicated late at night. They lost control of the truck while driving at highway speeds on country back roads. They all died. Story 92. Many years ago, I received a full scholarship to the United States Military Academy at West Point. They even sent a representative to our school to present it at a ceremony in front of our class. I got 2 to 3 girls pregnant either before or during my first year and had to drop out. 18 years, 18 years. She has one of your children and can hold you accountable for 18 years. Story 93. He purposely waited for the principal to walk by and called one of the black students something racist. The principal was also black. I never saw her that angry before or since. I was amazed that all he received was a week of suspension. Story 94. Not my school, but someone I knew. My first career was in road construction. This was in South Texas, and the crews were made up mostly of immigrants from Mexico. I had one white guy on my crew, a truck driver, and he had a strange story. He was a high school quarterback, a college recruit committed to Baylor University, popular with wealthy parents, the whole thing. Among other incidents, he got drunk and crashed his sports car into a tree. He severely injured his leg and ended up with a permanent limp. Pain medication led to opiates, which he balanced with methamphetamine. He was a mess. He had some wild stories, like rustling his father's cattle to get money to buy drugs. He ended up marrying a counselor from rehab. I tried to keep him out of trouble. Things I learned from him eventually led me to clean house and fire entire crews from other jobs because the company had become a traveling crime wave, moving from job site to job site. He came to me crying one day because they needed a truck driver on another site, and I was told to send him. He knew he would relapse because the entire crew were all methamphetamine users. I didn't mention this was a family business and that I was family. What a nightmare. I hope Steve is doing okay wherever he is. I'm so glad to be out of that situation. Family can be difficult sometimes. Story 95. The best soccer player I faced in high school received a full scholarship to an Ivy League school. The summer before college, he was pulled over with 3 pounds of marijuana, a large amount of cash, and an unregistered shotgun. I think his family might have been wealthy, so he probably did fine in life, but he really messed up a free ride to an Ivy League school. Story 96. 3 students broke into the auditorium in the last couple of months of their senior year. They connected one of their phones to a very expensive speaker and played some music. Because they did not know how to properly use the equipment, they ended up damaging it. All 3 were charged with vandalism for kicking the doors open and breaking the locks. The student who connected his phone was charged with property damage for the sound equipment. He had to pay thousands of dollars to the owner of the equipment because it was not the school's. It belonged to the owner, who transported it between 3 different schools for performances. All 3 students were suspended and lost their scholarships. They were also not allowed to graduate, or at least if they did, they were not permitted to participate in the graduation ceremony. Story 97. Engaging in conversations with minors and planning inappropriate activities with them. Story 98. The kid was in a highly advanced program in high school. I do not know what it was called, but they were taking advanced placement classes as sophomores. It was a difficult program. These students were very focused academically but struggled with socialization. They competed with each other and did homework until 2 a.m. daily. He became obsessed with finding lysergic acid diethylamide. He was caught with something and was away for a couple of weeks. The good news is he went back to honors classes and seemed happy. There was no jail time but probably probation or community service. It was obvious that he was a good kid. Story 99. Got addicted to cocaine and killed his sister and a family friend with a shotgun. He hid the bodies in the trunk of a car parked at a nearby train station. He is serving 20 years to life in prison. Story 100. Jason Brown, class president at my school, became addicted to methamphetamine and ended up murdering dogs in a hotel room and filming the torture. He was sentenced to 28 years in prison. Story 101. He got extremely intoxicated at a Halloween party and left with his best friend, the driver, also intoxicated, in their 1993 Mustang. This was in the early 2000s. They went off the highway into a ravine, likely traveling well above the speed limit. The car hit a rock outcropping. The best friend was not wearing a seatbelt. The popular guy was. The airbags did not deploy. The best friend was propelled through the steering wheel and out the window into the rocks. The popular guy smashed his face into the dashboard hard enough to break nearly every bone in it and severely damage his facial skin. The most devastating part was yet to come. The best friend did not die on impact. The force of the ejection pushed his head through the steering wheel in one of the holes, twisting his body so violently that it almost liquefied him. He shattered nearly every bone and most internal organs. The popular guy did not lose consciousness despite his head exploding against the dashboard. In his own words, which he shared often due to the trauma, he watched his best friend slowly choke to death on the steering wheel, crying for his parents while bleeding profusely. The popular guy managed to drag himself out of the car, climb up the ravine to the highway, and wave his arms to stop passing cars until someone finally did and called the police. The person who stopped thought the popular guy was wearing a realistic Halloween mask, as did the police officers. It was not a mask. The best friend died at some point during this ordeal. His funeral was closed casket. The popular guy required extensive reconstructive surgery and spent the next 12 years in therapy. He did not graduate high school, struggled with addiction, became religious, then disengaged from social media. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I ran into him. Of all the things, I recognized his eyes above his face mask at a store. He moved quietly and anxiously. We met for lunch a week later. He had been sober for 4 years, had become very unreligious as his therapist helped him recover, and had been living with his in-laws while working a low-paying job. He went back and finished his high school diploma, then earned an associate degree in business from a community college. He started a web design and webmaster consulting business from home. He got contracts through his father's connections, bought a house, and moved out. He will not drive a vehicle and cannot ride as a front passenger. He becomes shaky just being in a car. He rides a bike as much as possible, or his girlfriend drives while he sits in the back seat. His voice, in a word, sounds haunted. Just talking to him reveals that the memory is burned into his brain and is constantly there. The heartbreaking part is that, unlike many popular guys, he was popular because he was genuinely kind. He was a football captain who also did drama and computers back when that labeled you a nerd, making him an advocate for the less popular students. His face now actually looks quite good. Not like it was basically rebuilt, just a little off. But yes, that tragic day shattered his entire life trajectory. Story 102. A university football star decided to assault and stab his girlfriend after a football game, 1 month before graduation. She survived. He was caught after a few weeks of fleeing. The length of his sentence is unknown. Story 103. Small private college in Connecticut. This guy resembled Pat Tillman before we knew Pat Tillman. Even as a freshman, he was about 6 feet 2 inches tall, looked 24, and was muscular like a professional football player, handsome with a square jaw like an action figure toy hero. He drove around campus and town in his Jeep Wrangler with no shirt on, showing chiseled abdominal muscles like something from an Abercrombie and Fitch advertisement. He had attended Cheshire Academy just a few miles away, and, to be honest, he was generally a good guy. Cheshire Academy is where boys like John C. Bigglesworth III types are sent to set them on the path to success. He was the campus Chad decades before the meme, of course. A popular restaurant and bar a few miles down the street served alcohol to him and his friends despite being under 21. After leaving, they got in the Jeep, drove past campus on the twisty, windy back roads, lost control, and the Jeep flipped and crashed. He was killed, and his passenger survived, right at the end of our junior year. Bad decisions, he didn't deserve it, of course. Story 104. He got into drugs and stole several veteran plaques from a local cemetery to scrap the brass for drugs. He went to prison, and now I see him around town occasionally, still struggling with addiction. Story 105. He drove so fast in his fancy car that he killed a woman and her baby who were crossing the street. He was sent straight to jail. Story 106. He and his friend were playing with his father's guns. There was an accident and his friend died. It is unclear whether the friend accidentally shot himself or was shot. What is clear is that the popular kid turned the gun on himself, presumably in a panic. He did not die, but he will never walk or talk again. Story 107. One of the popular students in my UK sixth form, aged 17 to 18, was proud of his genitalia and would often expose himself. He decided to streak at a local swimming pool. It was not funny when there was a class of children having swimming lessons at the time. He was recorded for exposing himself to minors and was expelled. I am not sure what happened to him afterward. Story 108. She was not exactly popular, but she was determined to be promiscuous for fun. After a couple of abortions and a couple of sexually transmitted infections, she married an older man with a business and is now the unhappiest housewife ever. She finished at 21, never held a job, never went anywhere, never did anything, just gave up. Story 109. Not the most popular, but he was well known. Dad owns a large construction company. They bought several family-owned businesses in our area and are now the largest. 16 years ago, we were graduating high school. All he had to do was get his diploma, and his dad had the cushiest job waiting for him. He was basically set for life. On his 18th birthday, his dad bought him a new truck meant to be used for work after graduation. It had a giant V8 engine and dual exhaust, essentially like a semi-truck. He got high on pills, ran a red light, killed 4 people, and received 4 life sentences. Story 110. Ran a stop sign going 100 miles per hour and got stuck under a semi-trailer filled with potatoes. The car blew up and killed both people inside. Story 111. High school drug use. College committed sexual assault. University engaged in explicit sexual behavior. Partner witnessed the act. Story 112. Brock Allen Turner, also known as Alan Turner, was on the swimming team at Stanford University. He sexually assaulted an unconscious student behind a dumpster. He had to move back home with his parents and is required to register his address with the sheriff's office every 90 days for the rest of his life. Last I heard, he was working in a factory earning $12 per hour. Story 113. Broke into our old high school to drink on the roof and destroyed students' artwork. One was actively serving in the military and the other is now in law enforcement. Story 114. I knew a man in a wheelchair who had been in it since he was 18 and was 40 when I knew him. During a summer trip after graduating, he and some friends decided to go diving at a small local lake. He was a good-looking, really smart guy with his whole life ahead of him, but unfortunately, that day his life changed forever. Story 115. Parents got him a brand new expensive car right after he obtained his driver's license and kept driving recklessly to show off to everyone. He was doing donuts and speeding until one day he spun out at high speed. The passenger seat slammed into a tree, killing his best friend who was sitting there. It was absolutely devastating. Story 116. Real popular guy, football player, pretty sure he dated most of the popular girls in high school. He could charm the teachers and never really got in trouble until his junior year. He was caught with enough substances for it to be obvious he was distributing. To save himself from trouble and a long sentence, he informed on most of his clients and a few people above him. I was already out of high school at this point, but I know for certain half the senior class was arrested. He went from being the big man on campus to being the most hated man in the county overnight. He ended up getting killed. Even those who were his closest friends hated him and more or less said they would kill him on sight if they ran across him. This was before he was killed in an accident. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.